Good afternoon and welcome to Practical BAT. This session is about using the import-export feature in the bulk administration tool. There are a lot of videos out there on how to use like the BAT spreadsheet and all that, and I've done some other sessions on using custom fields and multi-argument queries and all that. But an oft overlooked feature in the bulk administration tool is import-export. It allows you to especially export wholesale any piece of data in your call manager. And then you can also use that to import pretty much any piece of data into your call manager. So we'll talk about some of the ways you can use this. I'm Marin Mahoney. I'm an instructor at Sunset Learning Institute. My collaboration is my primary focus, but I do have experience and certifications in other disciplines as well. Route switch primarily, and then some data center and some other stuff. So if you have other questions that are sort of related to collaboration, please feel free to ask those. If you have a question, please put it into the chat window. And if I feel like we need to have a conversation, I'll unmute you and then we can actually chat. So here we go. Oop, here we are. So what can you do with import-export? Well, again, you can export any kind of data. Now, this is different than a backup. A backup tar file includes everything you can export with export, right? The backup tar file also includes things like your TFTP file, so all your phone firmware and that kind of stuff. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, gee, then why do I need export? I do backups regularly, so why would I need to do export separately? Well, two things. Number one, that tar file that gets backed up is encrypted. There are utilities available on the internet that are not TAC approved that can help you open up one of those tar files after you've completed a backup. And so if you need to go, reach in and go get some data, it's definitely possible to do. A regular old export, though, is just that. So you can export all data or just some data. And it's obviously not encrypted. So this is why you might want to do exports in addition to your backup, your regular backups. And then I can import any kind of data. When I am teaching especially complex classes, I need to preset call managers with everything from, enterprise parameters and service parameters to the entire dial plan, LDAP integration, phones, users, everything. Anything you can think of that, to make a call manager go, I have files that I've created that I use to import into call manager to set it up. So when we're talking about any kind of data, we really are talking about any kind of data. Another way that import-export's useful, if you need to make bulk edits, and you need to make bulk edits for large number of records, the standard sort of bulk edit features that you see in other menus in Call Manager are generally limited to 1,000 records. And you want to do bulk changes in batches anyway, so that's usually fine. But exporting, let's say, all of your phones, every single phone in your organization, and then you by hand can go through the fields and look for things like description fields. Are they in the standard format? Who's different? The line appearance information with regards to things like display name for caller ID and whatnot. You can visualize this. Now, when you do that kind of export, you're going to get all of your phones. You're going to say export phones go, and you're going to get every single phone in your system. That does not mean that when you turn around and now import, that you have to import the entire spreadsheet. If I only make changes to 20 or 30 records out of my 3,000, I can, in the spreadsheet I export, get rid of the rest of them and only keep those 30 records and then import just those. So you have a lot of flexibility there. And bulk edit, general bulk edit features in the bulk administration tool don't include absolutely everything. In the last session, somebody brought up, hey, I've got phones that are currently listed as having a specific owner and an owner ID. Now, the bulk edit features allow you to change the owner user ID, but you can't change it from anonymous to owner or owner to anonymous. You can't do that. But I can do that, at least I think I can do that with import export. So the examples I'm going to use today, here's the use cases sort of. Number one, I'm going to export all of my phones. And then I'm going to select phones, and I'm not going to do this because I only have one cluster, but then I could take that set of phones and import it into another cluster. Let's say you're standing up a second cluster. I need to move some of my phones from cluster 1 into the new cluster. No problem. As long as the dependent fields, and I'm talking about things like calling search spaces and partitions and phone button templates, as long as all that stuff matches in the target, in the new cluster, it should be fine. And if you need to make modifications, you can do that too. So there's some flexibility there. And once you move the phones, there is a bulk delete feature in the bulk administration tool that will allow you to go in and remove the phones that you have now migrated. And you can do that using a custom field, which you've seen the other systems is just a list of MAC addresses. Well, gee, when I moved the phones into the new cluster, I had the MAC addresses. So then taking those MAC addresses and using bulk delete to delete those from the original cluster is pretty easy. Large sets of data, and again, standardizing description fields is sort of my common use. If I have 7,000 phones and I need to be able to make sure all of them have the same description format, export them all, let's go take a look. So we'll see that. And then we can make edits and import in batches. Here's one which probably has bitten at least a few of you in the backside, and that's this. Have you ever gone in and tried to remove a directory number from a phone and instead by accident deleted the directory number altogether? I've seen people do it. I've done it myself. You want to disassociate and not delete. But what if I do that? Or what if one of my new folks does that? How can I then reach in and go restore that information without doing it by hand? We'll talk a little bit about that. And then I'm going to give it a try. I haven't actually tried it yet, but I'm going to give it a try. How do we change owner and user ID to anonymous? We're going to give that a shot. So here we go. So in the first place, I have the bulk administration tool. Let me check. No, I don't have any questions yet. Here is my call manager. And I'm going to go into the bulk administration tool. And I'm going to go down here to import export. Start with export. The next thing it's going to ask me is, well, what sorts of data do I want to export? And like I said, pretty much anything you can think of can be exported out of your call manager. So system data, locations and regions, or SRST references, or enterprise parameters. I just want to get a list of those, any of that kind of stuff. Call routing data. So here we're talking about partitions and calling search spaces and translation patterns and call pickup groups and route lists and hunt pilots and the whole shebang. Anything under the call routing menu is listed here. Media resources. Maybe I need to get a quick list of all my existing media resources because I'm going to move from DSPs into something else and I need to see what I have. User data, not just the end users themselves, but also things about users. And that would include things like service profiles and UC services. Think Jabber clients, right? I need to maybe migrate these into a new system. So here you go. Device data, and here is where I can get phones. I'm going to leave phones checked because that's what I'm going to try to export. But you can see, again, I can export any sort of device-related item. And that includes remote destination profiles and remote destinations for single number reach. That includes user device profiles or my device profiles. Device profiles, that's your extension mobility profiles. So anything. Advanced features. I don't usually import or export this level of stuff, but just know that it's there and it's absolutely possible. All right, so what I have left checked is just phones. I am now going to give it a tar name, and I'm going to say all phones. and I'm going to run it immediately. Now there is this check dependency. Phones require things like, again, partitions, calling search spaces, phone button templates, and all that. If I click check dependency, what that's going to do is check all of the other boxes, all of the other fields that phones require. So device pool, security profiles, presence groups, MLPP domains. And you may want to export these along with the phones, and you may not want to. But if you're concerned, you're thinking to yourself, again, like, hey, I need to, move phones from cluster A to cluster B. What all are dependent records? Well, this is it. If I export all of this, and I could import the entire thing into a new cluster, and I should be good to go. So I'm going to now clear all those because I really do only want the phones. Here's phones. I gave it a name. I'm running immediately, and submit. And it's going to give me a little warning again that, I may have dependent records. Okay, like everything else, imports and exports are listed under the job scheduler. So I'm just going to make sure that the job is running and it's processing. Now, while that's cooking, I wanted to talk about a couple of pieces of software. If you've sat in the other sessions, you'll note that I use Notepad++. I'll be right there. To look at the data inside CSV files and to edit it. The regular old Notepad in Windows doesn't recognize carriage returns properly, and so if you open up a file in there, it's going to look messy. If you are using WordPad or Microsoft Word, there's not enough column width, especially for things like trace files. So Notepad++ is a really awesome utility to get. You can get it at notepadplus.org. It's a free utility, although I sent them $20 via PayPal just because I think it's an awesome thing. The reason I'm bringing this up is because the other piece of software you're going to want is 7-zip, which is the one I use, or another zip that can work with tar files. Tar file is a type of zip file. Regular old WinZip doesn't open it properly. And while Microsoft Windows can open tar files, it can't make tar files. So you'll want something like 7-zip. All right, and those are the two pieces of software I'm going to be using. So let me check, see if this is done yet. And while I'm doing that, let me check what the question was in chat. Yes, that's a good point. Bill made a point about if you are running a large export, again, I have 5, 10, 15, 20,000 phones. And similarly, if you're going to be running a large import, anytime you're doing a really big batch job, you're going to want to be careful about doing it during production hours. It can impact your publisher significantly. And then remember that once the publisher gets its database updated, it needs to replicate that out to all of the subscribers. So your publisher is going to be grinding for a while, and it is going to be then hitting the databases and all your subscribers, and it can have a substantial impact depending on the size. If you're working with 500 devices or 500 records or 1,000 records, you're probably fine. Once you get much bigger than that, seriously consider doing it off hours. That's a really good point, Bill, and I meant to mention that. Thank you for reminding me. All right, I'm kind of surprised. I would have expected this to be done already. There's a lot of fields on phones. That's part of it. Oh, come on. All right, what else can I talk about in the meantime? Let's see, I talked about comparing exports and backups. And again, just as a reminder, there's if you Google it, I need to open a CUCM tar file, right? I'm not going to open it because I don't want to take responsibility for you guys using it. But if you just Google that, you'll run across a utility that's really useful for opening up tar files. The tar files that are part of the backups are encrypted using the security password. And then there's another password embedded in the tar file itself. So you have to have basically two passwords, one of which is the security password, which you should know for your own system. And the other is a randomly generated key that but that's stored inside the tar file itself. So if you use this utility and you know your security password, you can open up the tar file, and in the header of the tar file, it includes the key to be able to decrypt everything else. And that's how that thing works. It doesn't hurt, though, if you're trying to work with tar files, especially lots of records, doing your regular backups, and then also from a documentation standpoint, periodically maybe making a backup of all your phones just in a regular old export, or making all your user accounts or your dial plan or something. It doesn't hurt. All right, our file is done. Let's go get it. Here's all my phones. Notice the extension tar file. Make sure I put it on my desktop here. All right. And here we go. Here's my tar file. I'm going to double click on it, and it works just like zip here. Now, notice there's two files here. One is the header, and one is the phone CSV file. I'm going to go ahead and grab both of these. And I want to show you the header first. The header gives the date and time of the export, the IP address of the server or FQDN, however it's listed, and what files are in here. I only checked the box for just phone, but there are other things that I could have checked, and every checkbox would have a line here, file this, file that. The reason this is important is when you later turn around and try to do an import using import-export, this header file is required. What you're going to have to do is edit our phone CSV, put it back into the tar file along with the header file that says what files I'm importing, and from there it will do the import. This file here tells Call Manager which checkboxes to make available when it comes time to do imports. If that makes, hopefully that makes sense. And in fact, I can give you an example here. Here is a tar file that I use for pod 3 when I'm setting up CIPDV2. And here's the header for that. Oh, I guess that's right. I need to edit open outside. I just need to export it. Anyway, you can see that there's a lot of stuff in there. It's a much, much longer list because I'm importing all of these things here. All right. So let's go take a look at our phone CSV file. And here we go. Now, all phones get exported. Notice among the things that get exported are auto registration templates. So anytime you're going to be doing imports and exports, unless you are specifically editing your auto registration templates or whatnot for setting up user profiles, get rid of those lines. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Delete. Here's my description field. Maybe I want to change the style of this. Phone types, calling search spaces, and on, everything you might want to do. And you can edit anything in here, providing you do it correctly, and then put it back into your tar file. So I like using Excel when I'm working with the whole phone CSV because it tells me what the headers are. If I look at this file, let me go ahead and close it. Oh, actually cancel. Save, that I'm going to close. If I look at this, let's say in Notepad++, because you can do that, it's just text. This is all well and good, but once I start getting out here, the header fields and what's in them don't line up like they do nice and tidy in Excel. So have both utilities available. Notepad++ is good for some things. Excel is good for others when you're working with these CSV files. So let me open this back up in Excel again. So I've deleted those two. And I'll tell you what, let's go ahead and do the example where we're going to be converting a phone from an owner to anonymous. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to only work with a couple of records. I don't want to mess up my entire thing. So I'm going to go get just, let's say I need to keep this, that, actually, etc. I want to keep these and I want to delete these. Let's just say. There. So now I'm just working with a half a dozen records here. The first thing we need to do is go find the owner, and we need to go find the owner user ID. So here's the owner user ID, and here's the user ID. Notice that the actual owner, whether this is an owned phone or an anonymous phone, is not in here. I'm not sure where that field is. It's going to be around here somewhere nearby. This is not one I tested before I tried to do this. Tell you what, let's see if we can find the word owner. Really? Close. Oh, that's because I was selecting here. Let's try this again. I was selecting the empty fields, so of course it had a problem. So owner user ID, and that's it. It's going to be one of these fields like these true-false fields. This is how this is going to happen. So let's do this. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and not save this. I'm going to go ahead and go into one of my phones, and I'm going to change it to anonymous, and then we'll export it and we'll see what that looks like. So, no, I don't want to make new. I want a phone. Find. And let me grab a random phone. You can't do a CSV file. Let me grab this one here. I was already messing with this one earlier. And I'm going to change this to not owned. And I'm going to change it to anonymous. Let's see what happens. Save. And I'm going to use a slightly different way to export this phone because I just want to see what the field looks like. I'm going to do an export phone all details, but I'm going to limit it to just the export phones, all details. And I think that was an 8811 as I recall. I'll go 8811. There. That'll be a smaller file. I just want to see what that file looks like, what that field header looks like. And this is the kind of thing you'll have to do. You'll have to play with this, try to figure out what to do with it while that's processing, because that's going to take a minute. Let's go back to the CSV file and talk about a couple of things. In the first place, if you are going to go in and standardize the description field, and you can see that my description field is already pretty standardized. Two things you can do. Number one, just bang through it. There are probably ways to within Excel to do search and replaces or to look for particular formats so that you can go in and standardize these fields. It is worthwhile at that point to keep track of which records you've actually edited. And the reason for that is when you go back and do the import, as Bill said, I don't want to re-import my entire 17,000 phones. I only want to re-import the ones that I've made changes to. So keeping track of those. And it's just as simple as getting the header and the line itself, create a new page, paste, and now any phone that you edit, grab the line, stick it on here, and this second sheet is the one that you would put into your tar file for import. And that way you're only going to be importing records that you're changing. And to that, while our other job is running, The other example I gave earlier was somebody went in and in the attempt to disassociate a directory number from a phone, they went in and just deleted the directory number. And hopefully you know what I'm talking about. Since I'm in, let me go take a look, show you what I'm talking about here. Newbies do this, and probably at least some of you have either done it or seen somebody who did it. I'm going to go into a particular phone. And let's suppose there was a second directory number. Let me go ahead and add one, for instance. I'm going to add, let's see, /+1 511 555 2001. I happen to know that that's a legit number here. And that's in, I don't remember. Let's just call it that. That's fine. Ugh, come on, hurry up. Right, so I now have two directory numbers on this phone. And let's suppose I wanted to get rid of this second number. So what people do, and I see this all the time, is they go into the second line and they go, oh, I want to delete this from this phone. So they click delete. And unfortunately, what that does is it deletes the entire directory number. So, here I'm seeing it only associated with one device. If this particular number is a line appearance on 4 different phones, and I only want to remove it from the one phone, what I would want to do is disassociate. But what I see happen all too often is that folks will come in here, especially new people, and just delete it. And that deletes the entire directory number from every instance on every phone. It's gone. So how do I recover? Well, what you would do is you would reach into your backup, right? Or a recent export. And you're going to go find that directory number. I'm going to go find 511 555 2001. And there it is. So it's this this line right here on this phone. This is the record that contains that. And if this directory number appears on more than one phone, you would want to go grab every instance, every phone that has this number on it, whether it's a primary line or a secondary line or a speed dial, but any number or any phone that has this as a referenced phone, you would want to, again, copy that line out, put it on its own sheet, and then import. And that would put everything back the way it was. And that is the way to recover from that. It's the easiest way to recover from that. If you need to reach into the backup tar file, fine. This phone's CSV looks exactly the same. Otherwise, if you have a recent export, that can also be useful. All right. So bulk administration tool, job scheduler. I hope that makes sense. I get that question frequently when I'm teaching, especially for new people. Okay, that's completed. Let's go get our file. And this is our 8811s. Download. And all I really wanted out of this was, I'm going to rename that to CSV so I can work with it. What I really wanted out of this, recall, is for this phone right here, right? That's the one that I turned into an anonymous phone. So let's go over. And I think it's going to be this right here. So user ID 1 and owner user ID, how interesting. So owner user ID is going to be whether this phone is anonymous, whether it has an owner user ID, and then who that owner is. This is the previous owner. But notice that this is blank. So by having this field be blank, that's how you're going to turn something to anonymous. And you'd want to wipe out that, and you'd want to wipe out this. So let's give that a try in our other file. And we'll take a look. Let's go grab, well, we've got the one record here already, right? let's go grab and let's go find. Here's user ID 1 and owner user ID. And we are going to delete the contents of both of those and save. And it's just this sheet. Let me go ahead and delete the sheet. And then I'm going to do, yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and save it because I only want to re-import just this one record here, the one for Jeff Black. All right, so let's give this a try. I'm going to go ahead and what I'm going to do is this all phones here, right? Remember, it already had the header file which said for the phones. On this new file that only has that one record in it, I'm going to just drop it right back into the tar file, overwriting the existing phone's CSV. Oops, I already still have it open evidently. There we go. So all phones. There we go. So I've now opened this back up, and if I edit this, I will see that I do only have the one record in here. It's not all records. Okay, so let's change the name of our zip file, and I'm going to change it, instead of all phones, I'm going to rename this Jeff Anonymous. And let's give this a try. Welcome administration tool, upload, download. Oh, I was right there. Now I'm giving this a shot. I personally have not tried this before, so we'll see if this works. I'm going to add new. I'm going to go get the Jeff Anon tar. And what am I going to do with it? Well, I did an export of it earlier. Now I'm going to use the import-export feature, so I'm going to import. And import. Now, if I go back over to import-export here, and I do import instead, I should see the Jeff Anon file here. Next. It has opened up the tar file. It has opened up the header file. Phone is the only one there. I would like to override the existing configuration because I want to override that record. And I'm going to run this immediately and submit. If it doesn't work, that there's some other field, that's going to require a stare and compare of the fields to see that, because there's going to be one other field, and it's probably a true-false field, where the records that are owned have a true and maybe the anonymous has a false. We'd have to go find it. So if this doesn't work, it's just a different field. It's always doable. You know, that information, the fact that something is anonymous is doable. So it's just a matter of figuring out how to do it. Oh, yeah. Number of records failed, 0. So it seems to have worked. Let's see if it actually overrode the data. Device, phone. And I'm going to go find the Jeff Black record. That was the one that we changed. Jeff Black, here's Jeff Black right here. This is the phone that, if we did it right, became an anonymous phone. No, it didn't. How interesting. I did change the data, right? I'm not brain damaged. And I went over to the owner and the owner user. Okay, there's some other field here. I'd have to figure out what it is in order to change it to an anonymous phone. I'm gonna have to do a little digging on that. If you would like to, go ahead and send me your email via private chat. And I'm gonna, that's a really, really interesting question. I want to find out how this is gonna work. So I'm gonna go dig and figure it out, and I will send you what I find. There's gotta be a way to do this. There's gotta be a way to do this. Line 1, because it overwrote it, but it didn't get rid of it. How interesting. Part of the thing is too that ownership has to do with licensing, and so that's always a little bit more fussy. All right, so we have talked about Oh, I have a feeling I've got more people asking me. Okay, no problem. I'll send the instructions. If I figure it out, I will send instructions to everybody, but I'll let you know one way or the other. Exporting phones for import into another cluster, we talked about that. Using phones and looking at that check dependencies checkbox. And then there is a bulk delete feature in the bulk administration tool that I can then delete the phones that I have now migrated. And you would want to do that via custom file. And the way that would work is you would get the phones via export, move them into the new cluster, hopefully get them registered, and then using that list of MAC addresses, that would be your custom file here, to come back and delete your phones. The other sessions have talked about custom files, but they're not particularly hard to figure out either. So there's that. The other thing I wanted to talk about is large sets of data standardized in the description field. Now, our attempt to import by changing the anonymous thing didn't work very well. So let's try something else. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of these components that we've been working with so far. So I'm going to get rid of header, I'm going to get rid of phone, and I'm going to get rid of our old tar file. And what I'm going to do is go in and re-download the original phones CSV, which had all of the phones in it. And let's try this. So here's all my phones. I'm sorry, tar file, there we are. Here's all my phones. And I'm going to go ahead and export the phones CSV. And I'm going to open this up in Excel. Now, let's take and again, I'm going to get rid of those auto registration template ones here. Delete. Now, my 8811 phones, those are intended to be lobby phones. And if you look at my descriptions all say desk phone, no matter what kind of phone it is. My 8811s still say desk phone. This one says lobby phone, but the rest say desk phone. So how can I change this set to desk phone? Here's how I'm going to do it. I am going to go in and I'm going to do a filter. And I'm going to filter on this field, and I only want to see 8811s. And now I'm going to have the system replace the words desk phone with lobby phone. Oh, let me try that again here. There we are. So now all of these say lobby phone. Well, that says kitchen phone. Let me make that lobby phone too. Right, so I have all of my lobby phones. Now, these are the only ones that I want. So I'm going to go ahead and do a copy here. I'm going to get create a new sheet and paste. So I only have that data. I'm going to get rid of this old sheet. So I only have this sheet here. Save. I'm going to take that phone CSV and put it back into my tar file. And I'm going to go ahead and rename this 8811 lobby. Let's upload and import. Oh, I keep forgetting I'm already in upload download. Add new. Now I'm doing this with a half a dozen phones, and you certainly, again, if you saw one of the earlier sessions, I showed how to do this very thing with So we are using custom field formats and all that for small numbers. But again, imagine trying to standardize that description field across 17,000 phones across your entire system. And that's where doing it like this can be handy. So I've uploaded the file. I'm going into import here. I'm going to go get, hey, let's all make all of my 8811's lobby files. Phone, override, run immediately, submit. And this should run pretty fast because it's just a dozen phones. Of course, watch, it's going to prove me a liar because that's what Call Manager does sometimes. All right, processing. See how fast it's running the records. All right, well, it's only done one so far. There's 3. All right, so we should be able now, and I'm just going to go ahead and look at the phones. I could wait for all of the phones to get modified, but let's just go find at least the ones that have been changed already just to prove the point rather than waiting for the whole thing. And I'm going to look for where description contains lobby. And there we go. So these used to say desk phone, now they say lobby phone. Mass bulk edits of custom fields like text fields. This is a great way to do it in large quantities. So we've talked about that then. Restoring a directory number that's been accidentally deleted. I could prove the point, but the fact that I just did the description fields, hopefully you can extrapolate from that. It's not that hard to imagine finding the records where that phone number exists and just re-importing it, overriding it, and poof, everything's back the way it was. And I will go figure out about how to do that in owner, changing that to anonymous. That's a really interesting problem. I'm gonna puzzle on that one. And that is what I have for import-export. It looks big and ugly, but it's really very straightforward. Working with the tar files is probably the hardest thing, and being patient, because especially when you're working with large numbers of records, again, that just takes a lot of time for Call Manager to process this. So as Bill pointed out earlier, be sure to do this off hours. And that's what I have for today. Do you have and who has questions about how to work with import-export, or do you have other questions about the bulk administration tool that I might be able to answer for you? Would it work for the export-import process if I need to change DNs from 7 digits to E164 format? I'm pondering this. No. And that's because that's actually a different record. But here's what you could do. E164 numbers, the vast majority of them are going to be on your phones. So how I would do what you're asking is the following. I would export all my phones. I would go into all of the fields that need phone numbers and change everything to E164. Now, when you go back and do an import, remember that's the MAC address that's anchoring it, and so it's going to actually actively change the directory numbers to the new E164 format. What you would do after that then is go into the route plan report, because all of those previously 7-digit numbers would now be unassigned. They are no longer, the 7-digit form is no longer associated with a phone. And so that would now be listed under unassigned DN. There's no direct way to migrate 7 digits into E164 numbers, but you can do a wholesale import of the new data and then get rid of the old data. Does that help? Does that help? Again, do it in small batches. I encourage you, anytime you're trying something new in BAT, if you have a lab, even better, try it there first. But if you can't, set up some dummy phones, and just work with those and until you have the process down, and then you can do it. And still even then do it in batches just in case something gets mucked up. But that's how I would accomplish what you're asking about. Is that good? That help? Awesome. Okay. I think that's that. So it has been a pleasure. Thanks so much for coming. Oh, all right. I'm going to go ahead and go on mute. Like I said, please feel free to pipe in if you have a question. Other than that, hopefully I will see you tomorrow or at another Tech Talk. Have a great day.